Okay. How's that? Okay. Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here today and talk about NIAID and our programs. And I want to thank Tony for reminding me that, or saying, I realize I don't have an acknowledgement slide, and it looks like it was deleted, but I need to acknowledge a whole group of people at NIAID who work with me on these projects, and some of them are sitting in the audience, including Allison Yao and Dawei Lin, and I think that's it from NIAID. So sorry, guys, the slide got deleted, I guess, on the airplane when I was working, but this really is a joint effort at NIAID in terms of data science and bioinformatics, and they've been key folks in our quest. So I think NIAID at this meeting is really a new kid on the block, and we're really excited to be here. So I thought what I would do is just start out with a little introduction on NIAID, talk about what we're doing in data science, and then give you some examples about infectious diseases and immune-mediated diseases and all the wonderful data we have and all the things that we want to do or doing with it, and maybe give you a teaser about moving from some areas into infectious diseases, which actually I was a neuroscientist before I came into NIAID, and now I drank the Kool-Aid and I'm converted. So what are we all about? So NIAID, the National Institutes of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, is one of 27 institutes at NIH. We're the second largest institute next to cancer, and we do what our name says we do. We fund and support biomedical research, basic and clinical research in the area of infectious diseases and immune-mediated diseases. Our budget is about $5 billion a year. And unlike other institutes at NIH, we have a very dual mandate. We support a lot of biomedical research, and as I said, in basic research and clinical research, but we also are the lead institute when it comes to actually responding to emerging diseases with our colleagues at the FDA and the CDC and the USAID and others. And I think that's really what really drives us in terms of what we do. So we have this dual mandate. As you can see from the slides, we fund, people don't really realize that about us, we fund a lot of basic research about pathogens, about the host. We do a lot of genomics and bioinformatics. We fund clinical research. We do a lot of vaccine and drug work. A lot of the vaccines that are out there on the market have an NIAID stamp on them in terms of what we did with preclinical or clinical evaluation and clinical trials. And we do product development. We do a lot of vaccines, therapeutics, and diagnostics. And we're very involved in terms of building research capacity within the United States and others. A lot of our programs are internationally based. And that is another sort of key feature of NIAID. So over the last couple of years, those of us that have been at NIAID have seen a real revolution in terms of data. When we first started data science, we didn't call it then at NIAID, and infectious diseases and immune-mediated diseases, we really were driven by a few experiments producing data. And 10 years ago, we knew we wanted to really push this idea of emerging technologies. Let's do things differently. We took advantage of what's going on in the Human Genome Project, and we started pushing technologies. And we had the advantage, like cancer does with the moonshot, is that we got tremendous amount of money after September 11th to actually build programs. And one of the things we could invest in, which really came from the top, from our division, from our director, Dr. Fauci, was pushing this idea of bioinformatics and databases and where are we going to put the data so we can make the data publicly available. So that really began. But what's been happening over the years, as you know, right now we're really in this data-intense research for infectious diseases, immunological diseases, and allergenic diseases. And people don't think about that as where we are in terms of these diseases we support, but we are there. We have a lot of data. Our supported projects are generating a lot of data, a lot of different type of data. And like what Warren said earlier, it's just not genomic data. We started with a lot of genomic data, but we have all kinds of data types that are being generated. And we really want to push this idea of data and data science, because at the end of the day, what NIAID is funded for, because we're really about the health of the nation, is to produce new vaccines and drugs and diagnostics and really improve the health of the nation in terms of these diseases. So we really want to take advantage of that. The other thing we realize, like most places and most institutes, is most of the data really sits. It sits in places, it's not in databases, it's not accessible, and we're really working with small percentages of the data that NIAID and others are actually generating and supporting through United States government money. So this is no different, now that I'm almost the last one of the day. People have been talking about this. I guess I won't mention the FAIR principles, but we really are realizing over the last 5 years that if we really want to transform data into knowledge, and we really want to change the way and enhance the way clinical decisions are made, how we make a vaccine, how we make a new drug, we really need to think about the data. But it's not just a matter of the data and putting it in a database. We've done that. It really is doing a lot of things to make it easier for the broad communities to use the data. And whether we're building data management platforms, whether we're doing data sharing, we've changed the culture in the microbial world in terms of data and data sharing, but we have a lot more to do in terms of governance. We're building programs right now in training the workforce, especially bringing in data scientists into NIAID to actually meet with our scientists, work with our scientists to make the data accessible in a very efficient way. So we have a lot of work to do, and I just hope we get the money to do it in 2018. So what have we done over the last couple of years? Actually, the last 10 years. So mostly we've been building bioinformatics capacity domestically and internationally, and it really has been focused around very large projects that we fund, whether it's our centers in influenza, a lot of our systems biology centers. There's a large program that's the Human Immunology Project Consortium, our malaria centers, our TB centers. These are centers that generate a lot of basic and clinical data, and we've been building databases and knowledge bases, as we're calling them now, around them. As we've been doing that, we've also been supporting some tool development, supporting data sharing plans, data sharing policies to make it easier for folks to share and access data. So we've been doing a lot of that, but we're realizing it really is not enough. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples about what we're doing and then what we are going to push to do. So I'm going to talk about two programs really quickly. One is our Bioinformatics Resource Centers, and then also ImmPort. And if you have any questions about the Bioinformatics Resource Center, actually I forgot to mention Ishwar. Sorry, you're our newest member of the group. So Ishwar is also part of our NIAID group. So if you want information in detail about our Bioinformatics Resource Centers, you talk to Ishwar and Allison. If you want more information about ImmPort, Dawei can help you there. So let me just tell you a little bit about these data management, data infrastructures. So in terms of Bioinformatics Resource Centers, we didn't want to build just databases. We wanted to build like ImmPort also. We wanted to build resources for the community so we could make the data available, we could have tools available, we could do training, and training was really important. We can do web-based tutoring, we can have actually workspaces where people could come in with their data and access other data, but all in an open platform. And we started these Bioinformatics Resource Centers probably 10 years ago. And right now we have 4 of them. Will we have 4 of them forever? Probably not, but this works for us right now. We have 4 of them. One's focused on parasites and eukaryotic pathogens. The other's focused on bacteria, which is PATRIC. The other one's focused on viruses, which is Viper. And the other one's focused on vector-based. And we're now in the process of thinking about what we're going to do for them in the next couple of years. And they've been very effective for the infectious diseases community, because there really was nothing like it in terms of these databases that were not just focused on genomic data, but other data types. We did go after the low-hanging fruit first, which was genomic data, but they're actually doing much more different kinds of data sets, including all kinds of omics data, clinical data, metadata. So they've really broadened what they've been doing. And this is just an example of what PATRIC is doing. So NIAID gets a considerable amount of money in terms of antimicrobial resistance from the US government to do something about it domestically and globally. And what that means is that it's all about drug resistance, and it's a huge problem in the United States and globally. And we actually are trying to build some additional tools and platforms for folks working on antimicrobial resistance and making data sets available so people can work on it. And not only are they working on it, but they're also building new tools through machine learning tools and others to actually start looking and using bioinformatics to actually do some novel things in this area. So in terms of an example, in terms of antimicrobial resistance, PATRIC has thousands and thousands of genomes that they sequence. Anything they can get publicly, some of them we have done ourselves through our genome sequencing, some of them are available publicly. They have them there, they're curated, they have tools where you can analyze the genomes. But what also they're doing is they're also putting in other kinds of data sets that are actually linked to our systems biology centers that I'll talk about. They're also thinking about prediction tools using machine learning to look at the data, look at the genomic data, and in our world, can you predict if a pathogen will become more resistant? And that would be very interesting to do. The other thing we're doing is we're looking at data sets, viruses and data and pathogen data sets, and can we build a diagnostic where you can actually look at the difference and see if somebody is infected with a virus or a bacteria, and that could change infectious disease diagnostics. That can change how we do business. If we can look at data sets and we can figure out if that's happening. We're also looking at microbiome signatures, to look at signatures in the ICU to predict if patients are going to have more resistance in many different pathogens. So we're using the data, we're using it for basic studies, but we're also using it to actually build new clinical tools that infectious disease docs can use. And you'll see that in other databases too. So, so this is run by Rick Stevens at the University of Chicago. And it's very, very proactive, and it's very responsive to what we need in infectious diseases. And what they're doing in antimicrobial resistance, they're also doing in TB and other high priority pathogens for NIAID. So this is ImmPort. So ImmPort has been around for a very long time, and this data resource, just like our data resource, is not just focused on one kind of data, but it is focused on basic and clinical research projects that are focused on immunology, and they make data available, they make tools available, they make clinical data available. It's very open, it's an open source. They have many studies that are funded by NIAID here that are available, so it's public data, it's accessible data, and it's actually used by many, many users. So I would encourage you to look at that, and that's another example. We have pathogen focused and host, now we have immunology ones. So these have been very effective, and a lot of the data from a very large center, the HIPC centers, which are immunology centers, the data is put here because it's very, I mean, we put a lot of money into these centers, and we do make the data available. So it's a very good place to look if you're looking for immunology data. And then this is just a list, a comprehensive list of a lot of the data sets they have. So, you know, it's flow cytometry, it's genomics, it's immunoassays. So it's very, very comprehensive in terms of what they have. So that's all great and good, and we have these siloed data sets, but we are now really thinking about and doing something about this, because we have these data sets, but we have a lot of data that really is actually supported by NIAID, funded out there, and no one's used the data. And like everyone else, we like the idea of using the data and using different kind of data sets. And for example, for say a disease like influenza, there's many, many different places that we actually support influenza data. We have influenza genomic sequencing data. We have host data. We have surveillance data. We have epi data. We have data that is actually from clinical trials looking at the immune response to a vaccine. So we have all these different data sets. They're all in different kind of siloed databases, and it makes it really hard for our investigators or people that are interested in, say, influenza, to actually go and pull the data from different data sets. Our databases don't really talk to each other. So we have a lot of work to do. So what we're doing right now is that we've built a framework for bioinformatics, and that's, great. But we're also actually just announced the NIAID Office of Data Science. And one of the things, and we've talked to Warren and Tony about what they're doing, and one of the things which may seem ridiculous for you folks here is that we internally have to coordinate what we're doing, because if we really want to make resources for the community, we have to coordinate what we're doing at an NIAID level, because for a lot of reasons. One, we want to make the data and tools available. And the other thing is that we all have limited funds, and we don't want to continue to duplicate efforts, and we really want to make resources for the community. And that's including our scientists on the campus at NIH. So some of the things we've been working on right now is that we really want to think about what we hear from our communities is that there really is barriers in terms of data sharing and data access. And we want to build better ways to do that. We want to build sustainable platforms that we actually can take some of this data that is sitting in people's internal databases and use it. And we also are developing training and workforce programs in terms of, we now just developed, and we're going to announce it soon, the NIAID Emerging Leaders in Data Science, to actually bring data scientists into the NIAID, have them work with our infectious diseases and our immunology-based scientists and work together. I know that's done at universities, but we really haven't done much of that intramurally. So this is, I think, a very good thing for the infectious diseases and the immunological community to actually think about a coordinated effort. Will this have a lot of money associated with it? Gee, I hope so. I don't think right now it will, but if we have an infrastructure and we do things, I think that it really will have an impact on our communities. We also have to make sure that we're really ready for innovation. We don't want to do things like we're doing today. We don't want to have siloed databases. We really want to move on and think about innovative ways, and including advanced tool development and machine learning, which we're doing some of. So I think it's a really exciting time for NIAID. So this is what our infrastructure looks like now. It's a little bit of a complicated slide. We have a lot of data generators, which we're really excited about, in many different diseases and many different, and producing lots of different data. Most of the data is not shared, and some of the data that's shared is shared in our, isolated databases, and that's a good thing, but it's limiting. And what we're going to move to in the next, and this is what it looks like. A lot of our large centers are filling in, making a lot of data. And what do we want to do with it at NIAID? We really want to do, we want to understand the pathogen and the host interactions and networks and the pathogens. But really what we want to do is that we want to build new targets for drugs, therapeutics, and vaccines. And we really want to build new strategies for clinical decision making. And a good example I always give is influenza. Most of you get an influenza, I hope you do, get a vaccine seasonally for influenza. But 50,000 people pretty much die a year from influenza. So not everybody gets the vaccine, but the most important thing is the vaccine is about 60% actually effective. And can we do a better job? Can we let the data give us hints about doing a better job to build a better vaccine? And the interesting thing about influenza is that vaccines work differently in different groups of people. So there's data there that can help us make a better vaccine, and we are starting to go after that. But that's a really good example, something that we've been funding for years, but we can do a better job in terms of even influenza vaccines. So what is it going to look like? So we, like lots of folks, are thinking about building, and we actually are in the process of it. We don't really call it a data commons, but we want to build some kind of infrastructure. Maybe it's virtual, maybe it's cloud-based, and is that really where we're going to have an environment where we can really work with our investigators, work with our intramural scientists, and put data in some place of value that others can use. And it's going to take a while, and we have some pilots that we're doing. And what we also will be working with is that we have a very much resource centers that are community-based. So this is not going to take away from that. This is going to be a data hub and a data environment like a data commons, where we will have data, but then we'll also have surrounding it our knowledge bases, where we have people that understand the diseases, understand the tools that are needed, understanding about working with the community. So I can't say it's a dream. I can say it's a partial reality, because right now we have our knowledge bases. We're going to launch a pilot for this data hub, this data commons. But this is really exciting for NIAID right now to actually do something like this. We've been thinking about this, and our efforts and our work with BD2K has really launched our own thinking about this. So thank you, Phil, and others who are who included NIAID with BD2K. So this is something that is really exciting. This is something we're going to work with communities with, and I hope to do more of it. The other thing we're going to be doing is that we're really going to be pushing this idea of new tools. And it's not just a matter for us of integrating data sets and doing things like that. We really need new tools, and we need new tools for clinical decision making, but we also need new tools to do clinical trial design and monitoring differently, especially for vaccine trials. We need to use the new data, build new tools, build more predictive analytics to actually help us predict, prevent, and respond to emerging diseases. That's what we're all about at NIAID. And I think through tool development and innovation and machine learning, and really actually spending more of our money on innovation and tool development, I think it's really going to help us with the data we're generating and our knowledge bases. But we really have to promote this idea of really doing innovation and new tools and new ways of thinking in terms of not just data integration, but how we do vaccines, how we do drugs, and how we actually do clinical trials. I mean, it would be great if we could actually design clinical trials ahead of time with data that we actually know and we've integrated and we get knowledge, so we don't have to go down the track in terms of going to a clinical trial and then it's just a waste of money. And so I think even in terms of drug development, it would be very helpful if we could develop tools in the infectious disease arena where we would actually help us not move from the next step in drug development, and actually, so it helps us into actually getting better drugs, and it helps us into the cost of drug development. So we're really excited about it. So now I'm going to give really quickly a couple of examples. So one of our big pushes at NIAID, like other institutes, is system approaches to study infectious and immunological diseases, and it's high throughput technologies, big data analysis, computational models, and we must have 20-25 centers focused on infectious diseases and immunological diseases in terms of systems approaches. And why are we interested in that? And obviously why we really want to identify predictive markers of disease and health, risk to infection, severity, a vaccine, efficacy, new targets, understanding networks of host and pathogen, understanding drug resistance, and this is one way that the Institute is really focused on it. So we're pretty excited about that. So we have two large groups doing it. We have the Systems Biology Infectious Diseases Consortium. They're focused on infectious diseases, and they do just what you think they would do. They're multidisciplinary in teams. They have high throughput technologies. They're not just focused on genomic data. They're focused on using technologies for metabolic and lipidomics and transcriptomics and other data sets, clinical data sets, EHR data sets, and really thinking about integration of data set, but really pushing this idea of modelers and modeling. And that's where that is. We also have the Human Immunology Project Consortium. They're doing systems biology approaches. They're very focused on immune-mediated genes and responses to vaccines, and so these programs really don't work together that much, but they're all generating a lot of data. And these are some of the programs we'd like to integrate through our new models at NIAID. And here's just some examples in the infectious disease world that's important to us. We've been building now these programs, and our PIs have actually identified, and again, they have to be validated. It's still early on before we use them for clinical decision making, but we've identified predictive markers of Ebola survival. You know, why do some patients survive and some don't? It's a very important question if you're going to think about treatments, and especially in a low resource income country. Okay, I'm done. Okay, so in TB also, we're actually looking for, in TB, 2 billion people get TB, and only 10% of those people actually are infected with TB. 10% of those people actually get active TB. And we're actually, through our scientists, looking at, we actually have gene signatures about why some progress to TB, active TB, and others. So they're just examples about how we use systems biology. And this is really what we're doing. This is really why we're interested in big data, because we want to start doing things differently. We want to enhance what we do. And we really want, and we don't call it precision medicine, but we are really focused on this idea of the power to predict, prevent, and treat infectious diseases, immunological diseases in a different way. And we would like to think that there's ways that we can build a better vaccine, build a better drug. Can we monitor a disease? Can we monitor the progression of disease? For something like Zika, could we predict why some pregnant women would have a baby with severe disease and why others don't? And we think part of the answer is in big data, and we're excited about what we're doing, and I will stop right there.
Thank you. That's a very interesting talk. I had a question. I think it's very interesting, the approach I think you're taking the right approach, but I was curious about how you choose the diseases that you're studying. And I think, for example, like West Nile virus is a good example compared to something like Japanese encephalitis. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of money put into West Nile, but Japanese encephalitis is underreported.
Right, right. So it's very hard in our institute because we do have high priority pathogens. We just have to. So, but we also actually support almost 300 pathogens. So a lot of things get focused on high priority pathogens because that's also where we get the money. So we get extra money for influenza, we get extra money for AMR. We also have we fund things by investigator-initiated grants. So we do look at our portfolio, we do see that we don't fund much in this area, and we try to promote it, but at the end of the day, unfortunately, it's all about money. Yeah. And then some research groups are more advanced than others, like the influenza and TB group are much more advanced in systems biology than the other group.
But that's a very highly funded virus, right?
Right, right. Yeah. But when we look at things, we do try to fund the other pathogens, but we literally have 300 of them to fund.
Yeah. Thank you.